Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. It's your boy TNL, and I want to kind of give you something to maybe help you realize that you're not so far gone, and you still have a lot more time than you think, and actually to give you some things that you can actually use going through your 20s and starting your early 30s, kind of to help you, just breathe in, breathe out, realize that it's not gonna be terrible. You're gonna be all right. Things aren't gonna be so bad. Your 20s are really weird because nobody gives you a real map. you know People will come around and tell you very vague stuff like enjoy it while you're young, work hard. You want to make sure you're finding yourself too, and that you're not wasting time as well, but nobody really explains what all of that means. So you spend years trying to figure out how to become an adult while also trying to make money, stay healthy, build confidence, choose the right people, and, avoid bad habits and not feel behind every single time that you open your phone. And honestly, your 20s into your early 30s might be the most important transition of your entire life. Not because you need to have everything figured out by 30. You don't, obviously, but this is the stage where your patterns start becoming permanent. The way you handle money, the way you treat your body, the people you keep around you, the habits that you repeat, the things you tolerate, the way you speak to yourself, all of that starts hardening into the person that you become. So this isn't a be perfect by 30 or 40 or, whatever, This is just a guide to kind of help, accidentally building a life that you don't even like. I want you to stop treating time like it's unlimited. When you're young, time feels very fake, especially when you get in that early 20 range. You feel like you can always start later. Later to save money, later to get serious, later to stop smoking, later to leave that situation that you've been trapped in, later to build the thing you keep talking about. But one thing I'm starting to realize is that time doesn't really feel fast until you've already spent it. You don't notice years passing while they're passing. You notice them afterward. And that's the scary part about it, because a lot of people don't ruin their life in one dramatic moment, but they just kind of drift and they keep saying, okay, one day, until one day becomes 5 years later. And you're just like, well, dang, like, what am I doing? Like, what? This is not what I thought was going to happen or something. Like, so if you're in your 20s or your early 30s, the goal isn't to really panic about your situation, but the goal is to just wake up. You don't need to sprint, but you do need to stop sleeping on your own life, because you know, the small decisions you keep postponing are quietly becoming your future. You're also going to want to build money habits before you make big money. Before you start to rack in, a lot of money in at a time. You know, a lot of people think that money problems disappear when their income goes up, but that's not always true. More money doesn't automatically create discipline. Sometimes it just makes your bad habits more expensive. And if you overspend when you make a little, you'll probably overspend when you make more. It's just the fact of it. It's just the fact of the matter. If you avoid checking your account now, you'll avoid bigger numbers later. If you spend to cope with stress now, more income might just, give you more ways to distract yourself. That's why your 20s are so important financially in your early 30s. Not because you have to be rich yet, but because this is where you learn to handle money before life gets more and more expensive, before, your rent gets higher, before your insurance gets higher, before your car start to break down. People will start to depend on you. Maybe you get a family, you got kids you got to worry about. Emergencies happen. And eventually, when you had that mindset of I'll figure it out later, it becomes a very expensive mindset. So build the basic system early. Save something, invest something, Avoid dumb debt on maybe financing a car, or even, just a decision that you should have made maybe later. Don't upgrade your lifestyle every single time your income rises. Learn what your money is actually doing for you. You don't need to be a finance expert, but you do need to stop being casual with something that affects your freedom, because money isn't just about buying things. Money is breathing room in your life. Money is options. Money is the ability to leave situations that drain you. Money is the ability to think clearly instead of constantly reacting. And that kind of peace is worth building early on. I'm telling you. You also want to take your health seriously before your body forces you to. When you're younger, okay, hear me out. Your body lets you get away with a lot. Bad sleep, bad food that you be eating, not exercising as much as you maybe should be, too much drinking, too much smoking, too much stress. And because nothing immediately breaks, you think in your mind, okay, I'm fine. But your body keeps the score. Your body is always going to keep the score, just quietly though. Energy matters. And when you keep doing this stuff, you're affecting your health. Your discipline is affected by your health. Your mood is affected by your health. Your confidence is affected by your health. Your focus is affected by your health. It's harder to build a better life when your body is... Oh, sorry. It's harder to build a better life when your body is always tired. And I'm not saying you have to become obsessed with fitness, or you need to go to the gym 2 hours a week, 3 hours, or not 3 hours a week, 3 hours a day. You just need to have some standards, right? Move your body. Go for a run. Go for a walk. Maybe go to the gym for 30 minutes and then up it to maybe 45 minutes. Sleep like it matters. Drink water. Eat in a way that gives you energy. Stop treating your body like it's just something that gets you from, one place to another. Like, it matter that much, because your 30s are going to feel very different depending on how you treated your body in your 20s. And the scary thing is, bad health doesn't always hit suddenly. Sometimes it just shows up as low energy, brain fog, anxiety, irritability, and feeling like life is harder than it actually should be. So protect your body early on. It's maintenance for the life you're trying to build. I'm trying to tell you. Also, choose your people carefully. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in your 20s is thinking your environment doesn't affect you, because it does. The people around you shape what feels normal. If everyone around you is careless with money, that starts feeling normal. If everyone around you parties every weekend, that starts feeling normal. If everyone around you complains but never changes, that starts feeling normal. And slowly, without noticing, your standards get adjusted. And that doesn't mean you need to cut everybody off and act better than people, but you need to be honest. Some people are fun to be around, but bad for your future. Some people make you laugh, but keep you distracted. Some people aren't evil. They're just attached to a version of you that you're trying to outgrow. And that's hard, because growth can make you feel lonely at first. You start caring about things differently. You start thinking differently. You start seeing old habits for what they are. And not everyone will understand that, but your future depends heavily on who you allow to influence your presence. Your present. Your present and your presence, honestly. So choose people who make you sharper. People who tell you the truth. People who want more from themselves. People who don't make growth feel embarrassing. Because your circle doesn't just affect your weekends. It affects your standards. It affects your, way of life. Also, you're going to want to learn how to be alone without feeling empty. This is one of the most underrated skills. A lot of people don't actually know how to be alone. They can only physically be alone, but mentally they need noise. Maybe it's music, maybe it's some scrolling, maybe it's some texting, maybe it's some smoking, maybe it's some watching shows, binging something. Anything to avoid sitting with themselves. But if you can't be alone without escaping, you'll keep making decisions from loneliness, and you'll stay in bad relationships. You'll keep bad friends around. You'll chase attention that doesn't even fulfill you. You'll confuse company with connection. Your 20s are a good time to learn your own mind. What do you actually like? What do you believe? What kind of life feels honest to you? Those answers are hard to hear if your life is always loud. Being alone doesn't have to mean being isolated. It means being grounded enough in yourself that you don't need constant distraction to feel okay. And that's powerful, because once you're okay alone, you stop choosing people out of fear. You start choosing them from peace. I'm going to also tell you to stop letting the internet decide your timeline. The internet has made everyone feel late. At 21, you'll feel behind. At 25, you'll feel behind. At 18, you'll feel behind. At 30, you'll feel behind. At 31, people act like your life is supposed to be completely locked in. And it's ridiculous. You start thinking everyone is richer than you. Everyone's happier than you. Everyone is more confident. Everyone knows exactly what they're doing, and they don't. They're just showing the cleanest parts of a messy life that we all have to live through. And if you're not careful, you'll start rushing into things you don't even want just so you can feel on schedule. A relationship you might not even be ready for. A career path you don't even care about. A lifestyle that you can't even afford. A personality that isn't even yours. You need to protect your pace. Not move slow out of fear, but move honestly. Your timeline has to be built around your values, your goals, your reality, and your direction. Not the highlight reel of strangers. I want you to build skills that give you options. A better life usually requires better options. And options come from skills, not just degrees, which is a common misconception. Skills, communication, sales, editing, writing, speaking, leadership, money management, content creation, AI tools, negotiation, emotional control. The more you become, the more options you can create for yourself. And that matters because a lot of people feel trapped because they never built leverage. They only built dependency. Dependent on one job, dependent on one paycheck, one person, one plan. But skills give you room. They make you harder to ignore by other people. They make you more adaptable. They give you more confidence because you know you can create value somewhere. Your 20s are the perfect time to learn aggressively. Not because you need to master everything, but because every skill you build, becomes a tool your future self can use. And sometimes sometimes one skill can change your whole financial direction. It can change everything from what you thought of before. This is very important. Do not make pleasure your whole personality. And your 20s will offer you endless ways to feel good for a moment. Parties, food, weed, drinking, sex, shopping, scrolling, gambling, attention. None of these things automatically make you a bad person, okay? But if your life becomes built around quick relief, you'll slowly begin to lose your edge, and it'll happen slowly. It'll diminish you slowly, but it will be there, and you'll be getting worse and worse and worse because comfort is addictive, and pleasure is easy to confuse with happiness. They're not the same. Pleasure gives you a break, and happiness gives you a life. And if you keep choosing what feels good now over what makes you proud later, eventually you'll start feeling disconnected from yourself. That's why discipline matters. Not because you need to be robotic, but because you need to prove yourself that your impulses don't run your life. You can enjoy life, but don't let enjoyment become avoidance. That's where people get stuck. Learn the difference between peace and comfort. This is very important. Comfort is doing what is easy, and I touched on this earlier. But peace is doing what's right for you. They can feel similar at first, but they lead to different lives. Comfort will always tell you, stay here, it's familiar, it's safe. Peace will say, leave, you've outgrown this. Comfort will say, don't have that hard conversation. It's too difficult. But peace will say, tell the truth so you can breathe. Comfort keeps you where you are, and peace will often require courage. A lot of people choose comfort and call it peace, but deep down, they know the difference. You can feel it. Peace feels clean. Comfort feels heavy. Your 20s and your early 30s are where you need to start listening to that difference. Because if you ignore it too long, you can end up with a life that looks stable, but it just feels wrong. I want to leave you off with this last one. Become somebody that you respect. At the end of the day, this might be the whole point. Not becoming someone everyone admires, not becoming someone who looks successful online, someone that you respect, someone who does what they say, someone who handles money with maturity, someone who treats people well, someone who doesn't fold every time life gets hard, someone who can be trusted with their own future. Because self-respect changes everything. When you can respect yourself, you make different decisions. You stop tolerating certain things. You stop begging for approval from people who don't live your life. You stop chasing every distraction. You start moving with more intention. And that doesn't happen overnight. It happens through small choices repeated quietly. Every day you either build self-respect or you either weaken it. In your 20s into your early 30s, these are the years where, these choices start adding up. So you don't have to have everything figured out, by 35, by 30. That's not the message. The message is this. Don't sleepwalk through the years that are shaping you. Use your time, not perfectly, not obsessively, but intentionally. Build your health. Learn money. Choose better people. Protect your attention. Develop skills. Stop copying timelines from people you see on the internet. Become someone that you can trust. Because your 20s and your early 30s aren't just about having fun or figuring it all out. They're about building the foundation for the person you're going to live with the rest of your life. And that person deserves your effort. Thank you for listening, though. It was TNL. Like and subscribe if you enjoy this type of video. I love making them for y'all. And thank you.